Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Good afternoon. We're here with Mesa County Compass, and we're going to be interviewing this afternoon Miss Jody Visconti Clow, who is the director of the Day Center for Catholic Outreach. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you. And we always ask a little bit about yourself. You know, it's kind of fun just to know you as a person, sure, as well as what you do professionally.
Sure.
And kind of your background and how long you've been in the position.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Colorado. I grew up in Buena Vista, came to college at what was then Mesa State. Met my husband, who happened to be kind of the boy next door. He was from Salida.
Oh, yeah.
So he knew my friends, I knew his friends, and how we didn't know each other is kind of weird, but and we've been now married. It'll be 35 years this year.
Oh, my goodness.
And we have 2 kids and 3 grandkids, and started out when I went to college. I planned to do something in healthcare. That was my that's what I had started doing when we were first married. Came back to Colorado and stayed at home with the kids went to school and stayed home with the kids, and then got out of school and needed to pay student loans and took a job working at a law firm and kind of just blossomed from there. I did divorce work for a few years and then went to a criminal defense firm, and then I was offered an opportunity through that job to work for the Alternate Defense Council. Mm-hmm. Lots of people haven't heard of that. It's so when the public defender gets a case, if there's multiple defendants or if there's a conflict of interest, Colorado has a system where there's an alternate defense. So it's private attorneys who take cases.
Okay.
Usually it's at a reduced rate, but oftentimes, especially in bigger cases, homicide cases, big drug cases, things like that, people can't afford retainers, and right, so that they're appointed, those attorneys. Mm-hmm. So this was a homicide case. I started working that, and then the attorney decided to leave his practice, and so I called the directors and I said, "Hey, I need a job," and so I started transcribing for ADC, and then started doing independent contract work for them. Did that for about 20 years, and in the meantime started volunteering at Catholic Outreach because I'm very blessed. Healthy kids, happy life, have fantastic husband, and wanted to just help my community, and went away for about 8 weeks to do a homicide trial, and came back, and Sister Karen said, "Would you like a job?" And I said, "Well, I have a job." And she's like, "Well, maybe a part-time job." And so that's how I started at the Day Center. That was almost 6 years ago. And I was partners with another previous volunteer. So we did 2 days on, 3 days off, kind of rotated. We did that mm-hmm. for a few years. He had come out of retirement from his 3rd or 4th job. I'm not sure. He's had many careers. And he had planned to stay for a few months, and that turned into 3 years. And we went through COVID together, and then he's like, "Yeah, I need to go back to being a volunteer." So, and then I had a chat with myself and thought, do I want to do this part time, or have I checked off all the boxes? And I had. As a paralegal, I'd done death penalty work and appellate work and federal, and so that's when I decided to go full time at Catholic Outreach.
Wonderful.
So it'll be 3 years full time, February 1st.
Oh my
so,
goodness.
Nice. Very nice.
Very good.
So that gives you a chance to see maybe some of the causes of criminality and some of the effects of criminality on the community.
Yes.
You have a good understanding of that.
Yes.
And it lets me, sister of the board, they've been very, not just support, they've been very supportive, but to let me kind of crisscross and stay in contact with the public defenders, and help like with, checking on court dates, I've been able to stay in contact with some of my old contacts, make some new contacts. And so I don't feel like I've had to cut off that experience. I'm using it in a different way than I did before. But to help. I mean, so I don't, because I was worried about that, could I just cut off 20 plus years of experience, but I'm getting to use it in a different way. I testified one time in all the years I'd been a paralegal. I've testified multiple times now as a director, right. Because I see a different side of people, and so I have been able to advocate. So it's interesting. So I'm getting to use lots of different avenues of my life and career.
That's fantastic, because that
path.
gives you a whole new perspective on things.
It does, absolutely.
So we had, as you were just talking about, that we had Karen Lampley on. Beverly Lampley. Yes. I don't know if you said Sister Karen. And it just fixed in my mind immediately. And we loved her, as everybody does.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember when the Resource Center, before it opened, she said, I don't think this is a good idea. What do you think about, now that we've seen it for over a year, what do you think about the Resource Center, and how do you think it should be handled?
Well, I mean, I just rewatched Beverly's interview, and I feel like it's a crystal ball. Everything that she had commented on, but that was what Emerson. She was talking about Emerson, going to Emerson, so they hadn't even opened yet. And I think what she had talked about, what other businesses had talked about, what several of us had talked about, has come to fruition, and then some. And we honestly, it's very strange. We just had this conversation earlier today. The people that are wanting some of these resources need to be heard. There's duplication of services in some of what the resource is doing, has been doing, is looking to do. And yet there are huge gaps in services. Transportation, there's not enough overnight shelter. There are groups of people that, families, domestic violence. I know that there are certain groups that are working on those, but there's still a lot of, we have men's, when the rescue mission shut down, that was a huge loss.
Hit. Yes.
And there are men in particular in our community that cannot get shelter, whether it's housing, permanent housing, or just overnight shelter, because they're on the sex offender registry. And of course, you say sex offender, but we had a case. He's passed now, so I feel like I can talk about him a little bit. But he had a case. It was a misdemeanor. I'm not excusing behavior at all, but it was a domestic situation. He and his wife, they'd been married and divorced 3 times.
Oh my.
They were in a domestic situation. In the situation, he hit her breast, whatever, and they charged him with misdemeanor sexual assault. He served time in ComCorps. He went through all of his anger management classes, etc. He was on the registry for 10 years, had petitioned to get off, was denied, was on it for, I think, 3 or 4 more years. He was a veteran. He was working with Volunteers of America, and his caseworker said, well, let's try to petition this again. So we started working on it, and anyway, one of my old bosses stepped up and said, I'll represent him, because I needed to be a witness for him. Ended up getting off the registry, and he did get into our housing. But you hear sex offender, and everyone gets lumped into this ginormous, oh my, and you just go to the worst case scenario, as opposed to thinking, they ended up getting married again, by the way, in this 10-year span. And she was the next of kin, so when he was hit and killed on his bike, she was the one that they called, and so there was this whole other relationship going on as he was sleeping outside. And so there are pockets of people. Some of it is things that we need to do probably on a legislative basis to maybe redefine some of these laws that are keeping people unhoused, but it's also there is just nowhere for them to go. So whether they're just out and about and roaming around, you know, and then I don't know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that there are pockets of people and there are pockets of resources that are not getting addressed as other things, you know. I don't know. Like, again, I think there's some duplication of services, and I think Beverly said it absolutely 100% correctly, that to say that the resources that are at the resource center are for people that were at Whitman that were looking for services. They were not looking for services. We were a block and a half away, and had a majority of the things that and the soup kitchen is 2 more blocks away.
Right.
So what other things are they offering that we weren't already offering? We have doctors, we have the shuttle, we have, you know, Rocky Mountain Health comes in up until this month. Grand Valley Connects was coming in. They're doing training now, so they're not able to come in. So there's it's difficult to argue. I don't know. It's not difficult. That's not the right word. But it's like what resources are there that weren't already being provided in a nearby area?
It's just it's bad to duplicate when you
when there's a different need.
Yeah,
where
when
you
there's
could
a different
put
need.
that.
And until a couple of years ago, that had always been. It was always kind of an unwritten rule is we would not cannibalize each other's services. So, Homeward Bound overnight shelter, Mona at the Joseph Center is families and children.
Right.
You know, Marty with Amos Counseling, Dr. Amos, there's sober living. There's, you know, there's like different niches. And then of course she opened the Hangout, and that's a whole other story. I mean, like the pushback that she got from the city with the Hangout. So there's different things that we had, you know, things that we have been able to do successfully, and then things that other agencies have been able to do successfully. We work together, and it's not stepping on toes. That's not what it's called. There's collaboration. If I have someone that comes in and is a young woman who's maybe pregnant, first thing I'm going to do is call Mona.
Right.
Because I know that she knows exactly what to do in that situation.
Absolutely.
Same with, you know, maybe a veteran who has just moved here. It's going to be Kelsey from the VA, and if, you know, and maybe someone from VA. It'd be VA first, but then, you know, we have all of these resources that when we work together, it seems to be the flow is better, and then we're also not we're not duplicating, you know, like we're not calling the same agencies twice. We're not there just seems to be a flow when we coordinate and collaborate together, as opposed to and I've had this happen several times in the last, especially maybe 6 to 8 months, is well, did you call Rocky Mountain, or what about this, or what about that? And it's like, we already did that. We did this, and this. So it's
And
just
we've been doing it a long time too.
well, that, and so, but for a specific person where it's okay, well, yes, that's already been done. I understand that maybe it didn't work out this way or something. I think it's a communication thing, and then I don't know. I guess maybe in Bev's. I guess I'm going to keep going back to her a little bit, but I think there's kind of it doesn't really matter who gets credit for it as long as someone's getting helped. And I think that gets tossed to the wayside sometimes, because it just, you know, we're trying to help people, and that's the bottom line. And so if you just call and you help, or if you have somebody, I never throw numbers away. I've on it. I mean, this is, I don't know if it's embarrassing or not, but if I have your number and I need a favor, and it might be 5 years ago that I've talked to you, you may get a phone call from me, because I know that it's like outside the box, and it's like, well, it's kind of weird, but I may give you a call. But sometimes that may be the only person that we've tried every other avenue, and this is the only way that I know to maybe get this person through whatever hoops that person needs to get through.
Well, and that way you're not duplicating services, like they're going to the resource center and then they say, oh, they're not doing anything for me. So they run over to Catholic Outreach and the same thing all over again. And so it's kind of a, I don't know, it's redundant.
Well, I mean, I think it's redundant. I've heard some of the argument is that because we are only open for a short period of time in the morning, that's created barriers for people, and I will say that we tried staying open longer when Glenn and I first took over. So that was almost 6 years ago. We were open 6 to noon.
Mm-hmm.
The early hours were for people that were working. That was what it was. That's how it started. We took over those hours from the previous director, but that's not who we were seeing. The 6 o'clock people were the people who had been up all night using drugs, etc. And so that whole early morning, not the whole early morning crowd, but the majority of the early morning crowd were the worst behaved part of the crowd. And then we didn't have volunteers at 6 o'clock because that was just far too early to ask anybody to come in.
Right.
So typically it would end up, we had one person who he did like coming in that early, and then it was just one staff member. So we were trying to do showers, laundry, mail with one staff member and then this one volunteer. And by the time volunteers got there at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, we'd have had 80 people come in, and we were breaking up fights. There were drug deals going on. And it was like coffee being thrown at. It was ugly. And so Glenn and I, it was a couple months, we reevaluated and said, wait a minute, like we need to. So we rolled our hours back and said 7 o'clock is early enough. That gives them time to come in, get their shower, get their laundry. And then the 12 o'clock thing, and then the hours were kind of getting pushed because they'd come in and they'd hang out, and then they were taking some, and I won't say all, but some were taking too long to gather their things, so they weren't getting over to the soup kitchen until 12:30, quarter to 1. Well, then that was pushing Angela's crew at the soup kitchen back. So then she contacted us and say, hey, I need your help. That I can't have people showing up at quarter till, and then now that changes her cleanup crew, that changes their whole routine. So then we went back to from 7 to 11:30. Well, then COVID hit, and then we had a very long period of time where we had 5 volunteers for the whole place. And it was we had many discussions, and it was very important for all of us to maintain basics. So it was showers, laundry, mail. We didn't have a lot of service providers. They were not allowed to come in. That was, with medical providers, etc. So we went back to the basics, and then in order to not burn ourselves out as well, because we have families.
There's only so much a person can do.
And then both Glenn and I had families to take care of as well as other staff members, and then as to not burn our volunteers out, then we cut back to 11, and the hours have stayed the same because it actually gave time for folks at 11, gave them time to still run over to the main office if they needed to get clothing or food, or so then they could roll all of the things in. So if you're coming from wherever, Orchard Mesa, or you had made it down here, you could do all 3 things in one shot. And so it seems to have worked. I understand their argument for the limited hours, but there's a method to the madness. And the sign up, we do sign-ups for showers and laundry from 7 to 9. If you're on the list, you'll get your shower, you'll get your laundry. Oftentimes we do 50 showers in the morning. We're putting the last person in at 10:15, but that means they're done by 10:30, 10 whatever. But then that way we can get laundry going. That doesn't, because we're closed at 11, doesn't mean that we're not still working and cleaning up and getting our, we often do 12 to 14 loads of towels after everyone's done with their showers. So on top of, and then we're doing 30 to, usually 30 loads of laundry is my cutoff, just because it takes that long to make sure everything gets dried by 11. If we get the last load in at 9:15 or 9:30. But there have been days when there's some smaller loads, and we'll, if they carried it all the way from 29 Road or wherever, that I break my own rule, and then we end up doing 33 or 35 loads, and there are reasons for the time limits. So it's not to be mean, and it's not to be like I got to get out of here because I got to get home at 11:30. I'm rarely home by 4, and if I am, I'm usually working at home on other stuff because there's lots to do.
Well, and I know one of the things that Bev thought was so important, and I think it's a difference in philosophy between the Resource Center and Catholic Outreach, was she said we need them to come out and to get help. And we sit down and we look at not how are we going to have you have a house for this month, but how will we prevent you from losing your house in the future? And if you have a low barrier place where you say, well, they're not comfortable with us and we have to build trust, she said that's not really helping them get better and get on their own feet. And so I'm wondering if you see that as well, or
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of different philosophies, and every day I say this to myself. One of Bev's that she taught me over the years is we don't enable, we able. So it's a hand up, and you can see that people have to invest in themselves. They're much more successful. We can point the way all day long. We can point the way, but if someone isn't willing to invest, they're the ones doing the hard work. Whether it be, going, I can tell them, okay, you can do this at the housing authority, but they're the ones that have to gather the information. They're the ones that have to go through Social Security. They're the ones that have to go to DHS and get the paperwork. They're the ones that have to go through the classes. So whether or not we can point them in the right direction or the whatever.
And make contact with them.
Oh, absolutely. Give them, call so-and-so, or here's the paper, or, even get, if we have them available, bus passes, or the shuttle. We have the shuttle at the day center 2
So
times
really,
a week.
you're just telling them they need to learn to be responsible.
It's kind of
you can take them by the hand and lead them everywhere.
We're learning new words, and I think so. Advocacy is a huge word. Navigation is part of it.
Yes.
And I just had a conversation with a mom today. Her son had a traumatic brain injury, and then suffered a second one, and he passed away.
Oh dear. Oh yes.
And had suffered bouts of homelessness throughout all of that, because again there's lots of reasons that people are homeless. Every person has a different story. There is not we have a global issue, but it's an individual maybe it's a global problem but an individual issue, and that's how you have to look at each scenario. Each situation is different, and you have to talk to and listen to each person, and every day they may be in a different place. There may be one day where somebody's very motivated and very much wants to, address health issues or addiction issues, mental health issues, whatever it is. And then the next day it's like, it's not so bad. I found a place that, I'm okay. I'm okay. And it's just part of it. It's cyclical. Sometimes, winter can very much motivate people to get inside, go to treatment, do all the things they need to do, and then they get through the winter, and then summertime comes, and it's like, I'm all right. So it's just, it's every person, every situation is different. Age has a lot to do with motivation. Illnesses can have a lot to do with motivation. The loss of friends can have a lot to do with motivation. So it just, and each person,
everyone's individual.
Everybody is very different, and so you just, when I see people, I don't know how there's 85 I don't know, 100 people. So you just, and we're having conversations about something, and you just kind of listen, and you kind of catch them on a day that, someone's looking for work. And so you kind of say, oh, okay, well, I heard about such and such. And, oh, well, so-and-so's looking for, I think I found a house. Well, what do you need to do to get into that house? Or, I haven't been feeling very well. Well, the doctors are here tomorrow. Let's see what's going on. That, this is the second or third time you've been in here where you just don't look like you're feeling very well. And it's, it's more than a cold. It's, there's something going on. So you just kind of, what can we do and how can we help? And then others, they're just doing their thing. And then one day all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got a place. They just go, fantastic, give me your, send us your forwarding address or check in with us every once in a while. So it's just, some people need a lot of help. Some people need a little help. And some people they're just stuck for just a little bit. And then it's just, I don't know, it's very different. It's just, everyone is very, very different. So we're just there to answer.
So you can't just lump them all into
absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. Oh, no, absolutely not.
So what would you do with the Resource Center? How would you've been given a magic wand. They say they have to be out of where they are by the 1st of April, right?
April 15th.
April 15th. Oh, they get to get out on tax day. So
Oh, wow.
where, what would you do with that? How would you change how it's used or where the money's going to benefit more, not duplicate? How would you utilize that?
And how would it look to you?
Yes, and what role should the city play in that? Because you've looked at it, you experienced it. What do you think?
Well, I think I would go back, and I think I would collaborate with the nonprofits that have been doing this for a long time.
And which ones would those be?
Well, I think Catholic Outreach would obviously be at the table. I think Joseph Center would be at the table. I think you'd include Rocky Mountain Health. I think probably Hilltop. You'd have to include, well, I think there's many. I think you'd include, do you all know about the MAC program? So I think you'd include MAC representatives. I think you'd include like social services. So maybe not just nonprofits, but maybe DHS. It would be, I think those are big players that could have an impact in what resources people need and how they could be impactful in helping. So DHS, Social Security, the Housing Authority. I mean, if the end goal is to increase the opportunities for people to get housing, then the players that play the biggest roles in how they get housing, DMV, those are the setbacks. Sherry from Peace and Justice, the people that are helping with the barriers right now that are holding them back from getting, and I'm not saying holding back, but
if you can't
GVT,
get this, you can't.
yeah.
Right.
So GVT would be, just transportation, Sunshine Taxi. They are, some of the other ones, the medical rides, those are all players in some of this population, and
But you'd all need to sit down to the table together and come up with a plan rather than just taking off and
being
going.
told what to do as opposed to having input is different. Mutual aid partners is another one. They've been very successful at the Resource Center, but I think you have to have, again, I think collaboration. When we've seen collaborative projects come together, has been the most successful. And when you can pull from all, you have resources that have been doing this work. Well, I think Bev said it the best.
Right.
You don't need to try and fix what's not broken. And so you can always make things better, but you don't need to reinvent the wheel to do that. And I think when you have people that have been doing this work for 30 plus years, 20 plus years, their opinions are valid.
Yes.
And to listen to them and have input from them from every direction would be important. So that, I mean, I think that's where I would start is.
And what role would you have the city playing in all of this?
Or would you?
Or would you? Or would you say, let us work amongst ourselves because that's not your job? We had Shannon Seacrest on last week, and he said one of the roles that he didn't see the city being involved in is housing. That he didn't think it was the city's role to be an owner of property and developer of property. He said, when did that happen? So
honestly, I do think I think it's a conflict of it. I truly, it hasn't been advantageous from where I've seen it to have this, if there's grants that can be obtained, I don't know. I mean, we do our own grants, so I don't know. I think it's convoluted things to have the city involved.
And not their area of expertise.
Well, and again, that we were kind of talking about that as well, that you have a housing division that is dealing with homelessness. They're very different. Putting someone into housing, we have housing through Catholic Outreach. We have a housing director. And she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. But her role and my role, dealing with people who are coming inside, living, not living, that's surviving, our roles are very different. And so when people are asking me, well, what's this grant or how is this that's a whole other, I mean, she has background in property management. It's a very different realm when you're talking about housing, and it's very different. Like, she's very well aware of, addiction issues or trauma issues. So when she puts people next to each other, like, she's well aware of those types of issues, things like that.
Yes.
So housing is housing someone and then maintaining them in housing, as far as, all the landlord rules, and that's very different realm than dealing with someone who just came off the bus from somewhere else and doesn't have a coat, doesn't have shoes, doesn't have socks, knows no one in the area, has a mental health illness, or there's a whole bunch of different things, and again, to lump those two groups together, someone who's looking for housing is in a way different spot than someone over here who
doesn't have anything.
Or would just like to have
have
some
any-
shelter.
or maybe doesn't. Maybe is just someone who's in town for a little bit, doesn't really know what they're doing. Maybe there's a lot of what ifs in that. Maybe they're just fine. Maybe that for them, they're just fine every night staying outside because that's freedom for them.
Right.
And there we have lots of veterans that are like that inside is confining. They're claustrophobic, they've got PTSD. This is a sacrifice that they make, is sleeping outside in the cold, but inside they can't do it. Right. So there are lots of different choices, but to say, and that's where I guess I've seen some of the issues is, and I've been told that by some of the people, is they tell me what to do, and I want someone to listen. And so I think that's part of it is, and I guess that's the other. It's taxpayer money, so you have homelessness and housing, but then there's this whole other population of, well, is that the best use of our taxpayer money when we have nonprofits that are utilizing grants and donations and again have been doing it for a very long time.
Yeah, they're duplicating services from the city, basically. So, yeah, it's a bit. Shall I say, stay in their lane?
Well, it's a bit confusing. So, and while I'm you know, and we've had conversations about this, that, you know, we needed the help from the city to get the land for Mother Teresa Place.
Right.
So we're grateful for that.
But that's different, totally different than the resource center has been set up.
Exactly. So,
and that would be, to me, looking at it, that would be by far the better help. The better use of our monies is to help you help them.
Right.
I think that has been from where, you know, I don't know if you're ready for this conversation. I want to talk about the good stuff, because when I look at like Mother Teresa Place and the positivity, we're going to have 103 apartments very soon. So we had 63. We're adding 40 more.
Really?
And that's permanent supportive housing.
Wonderful.
That is, when it's, you know, we have our first building is, I think, 15 or 16 years old. And then we have St. Martin's 1 and St. Martin's 2. And so when you look, you know, those are investments that are long-term investments. And those are providing homes for people. They're fully furnished. And, you know, we have, you know, I'm so excited for Mother Teresa Place. This is just, I'm so excited. But then 40 homes, that it's a long-term investment that, I just, again, I think you just said it is an opportunity, you know, let us do what we do best with the money. So if there is an opportunity for, like, there's a piece of property that is, you know, not, well, like I think the Salt Flats is a good example of, you know, there is going to be, that's Housing Authority is going to be building out there. But when there's opportunities that if it was, you know, if there's an organization, a nonprofit that comes along and says, hey, you know, we need another overnight shelter, this is available, you know, funding could get us over the top for that. We'll take care of running it. We'll take care of this. We just need help with funding.
Well, I like that idea. I'm running that through my head a little bit there, and that sounds really a whole lot better use of our funds and our time to let you manage those kind of things and let us tell us what to do rather than we tell you what to do, so to speak.
Well, and I think that, well, again, I think it just, there's different ways of doing things. And I think you kind of go back to what worked and what didn't work. And, you know, we can, you know, we always, you know, there's flexibility. Anybody who's a parent, anybody who's dealt with, you know, this population, you learn flexibility very quickly. We never have the same day twice. No. And you can't expect to have that. So flexibility is good. But you also have to be able to have, self-awareness and understand when something isn't working and say, okay, oops, I messed up. We're gonna do this, and say, okay, yeah, I tried it. We tried it.
Been there, done that.
Done that.
And what did we learn from it?
What did we learn from exactly? Like, hey, that wasn't working very well, so we're going to do this, or you know. And
I think projects like Mother Teresa's Place is just outstanding. That just, I am with you.
When Bev described it, it was just, you know, moves you.
Oh, it does. It's I'm, and it's better than I don't know. I like, you have a vision sometimes. And then this is like so much better than the vision. I purposely haven't been in since they put the roof on. So I haven't been because I want to go in. It's just a thing with me. Because Sister's like, I think actually we're doing a walkthrough next week. So I will go in next week and see it. But I have friends that have been working on the project. And it's actually kind of a cute story because he worked on the day center too. And he said, so I just have a question. He goes, because, you know, we see those people, you know, some of the people hanging out down there. And he said, they're kind of a rough crowd. And I said, like, when I, like, because I said, you better call me. And I said, I'll be, he said, no, like in the afternoon and stuff. And he goes, like, me and my guys that are working, we just want to make sure, like, because it's such a beautiful building. He said, we just want to make sure that it's going to stay nice. Like, we'll be upset if it's like all of our hard work is trashed in a couple of months. And I said, I can promise you. I said, if you want to come look at any of our buildings, I said, that's part of it. Is
It isn't going to become a tenement.
it doesn't.
Right.
No, I said we have our facilities crew. I said they take a huge amount of pride. And I had a gentleman that came into the day center earlier this week. He hadn't been in. He just gets his mail, so he never comes inside. He just goes to the foyer. And he came in and he goes, wow, this building has kind of held up. I'm kind of surprised. And I said, why would you be surprised? He goes, well, you got a lot of people every day. And he goes, it's so clean. And he goes, and I'm just surprised. And I said, because we take care of our stuff. And the apartments, same. Like, they're just, they take good care of, but that's part of, like, our vetting process. And, our case managers and our housing director is, it's not just here you go, here's a house. Because having a house is great, but that's only part of it.
It's only
that's
part
four
of it.
walls,
Yes.
floor, and a ceiling. There's a whole part of the program of checking in, how you doing, what can we do to make your day better. And sister, another part of our housing program is giving back. So she encourages all of our residents to volunteer. It doesn't have to be with Catholic Outreach, but it's some way of, giving back
to the community what was given.
Yeah, and you see that in many of them that it does make a difference.
A success story. My goodness, I can't even speak. But anyway, those are the kind of things that we need to hear. It isn't all just.
Oh, I got lots of them. We've had. You guys have probably heard about my board. So for the last few years, we were keeping track of people who had passed away because we had so many. At one time, we had 4 in 1 month, and then we went a month with maybe 1, and then not last August, but the August before, we had 9
Oh
in
my.
1 month, and it was just. And when people kind of come and go and, maybe hadn't been in a month or way, it was a way of communicating, like, oh, I haven't seen him around for a while. And then it was like, well, he got hit by a car or.
Oh my goodness, okay.
So I'd been doing that for the last couple of years. And thank goodness last year was, the year before was in the 30s. This past year, I think it was 17. So January 1st came along, and I went to write something on the board, and they said, you're not gonna do that. And I said, well, you guys tell me what you want to do. And one of our young ones had just graduated from rehab, and they said, well, can't we just put that up? Let's have a positive board this year. And I said, all right, you guys got it. And they said, it just breaks our heart every day when we come in and we see our friends' names on that board. Maybe we should have something positive. So we have a positive board, but then I talked to that mom today whose son had passed, and his name wasn't on that board. And she said he needs to be remembered. So now we're going to have both.
Okay.
So I understand. So we're gonna have positive, and then we're gonna call it a remembrance board, not a sad board, but a remembrance board. But yeah, so we've had 2 of our people graduate from rehab. Just in recent weeks, we have a 3rd that's in rehab. Will graduate, and I think she's got maybe 20 more days. She calls me every day. She's doing fantastic. One of them is in sober living, and both the 2 guys that graduated are in sober living. One is working. We got one of our older gentlemen into assisted living. That has been almost a year-long process to do that. Another one is very close. We've got just a little bit of a push to do that. So yeah, we've had quite a few happy stories for 2025. So fingers crossed that we keep going that direction.
So on the rehab, they always say that that's a real need in the community. Do you have adequate sources for rehab, or what could be done in that area too?
Oh, we can always use more, but these success stories, they're all out of Junction. They're not staying here. So that has been a big.
So we need a rehab facility, or what do we need?
I think I don't think that's it so much. Maybe more sober living here, but resources for sober living, because oftentimes we have places, but if you have to pay rent and you don't have an income, then how do you do that? So
right.
whether it's scholarships or grants or something like that to help pay for sober living is definitely a need.
And I don't know about sober living, so talk to us about
so
what that is.
It's sort of it's supportive living. So it's temporary, but it's so when you come out of rehab, you have group support, you have people that have or are going through this similar situations to you, most often case managed, so that you are in a setting that, so that you're not trying, so that you have that support, so that you can continue your recovery, so that you're not just going from, rehab to
the streets,
try to
maybe.
and that's the hope, is
Kind
that
of a
then,
halfway house type thing.
exactly. And so then so that you're encouraged to go to, whether it's AA or NA or both. There's also Peer 180, I think that's the right name. So that's another, there's other support. Case management and all of that is huge. So that, and again, if you have a court case, so that's helping you get to your court cases on time, get to your attorney meetings on time. If you have medical issues or mental health issues, helping you get to all of those doctor's appointments, just anything to help you. A lot of times it's helping people learn to live sober. So we always kind of talk about, so there's this is the person, and then there's the addicted person. And then there's a misnomer that, when they're sober, then they go back to this person. No, it's like you become this whole other, you're not a different person, but you're living a different life, because you're never going to go back to who you were before you were an addict. You just live life now you live life a different way. And so you have to manage life a different way. So now you have to manage life as an addict. So sober living and all of those other resources are teaching you how to live that life. So some crowds that you used to be able to hang out, you can't do that anymore.
Not be able to do that anymore.
And so the couple that he's in sober living and she's in rehab right now, they will probably not come back to Grand Junction once they're finished with they plan to stay over in the Front Range, because there's just too many ties here that are and triggers and things that
Understood.
We're growing, but we still, we call it what is it, the 6 things to Kevin Bacon.
Right.
Junction is the 3 things to how do I know you. I met a guy the other day. He was best friends with my neighbor from 20 years ago. And I'm how does that happen here?
It's a very small.
It is very small.
Even though we're growing, it's still a small city.
How do
town.
you know so-and-so? And then you just kind of do this. Yeah, so, and then that becomes, especially if you've been homeless, if you've been in the drug community, so there's lots of things.
So they need to get out in order to make a clean break.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's difficult to do if you've got a court case,
Absolutely.
if you're on probation, if you're on parole.
You have to make all those arrangements. You have to do all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I understand that.
So there's lots of things that you want to get sober, but then you're tied here to the community because of your court cases, etc. And then the program, I think, we have a few programs, but they're, and I've had people tell me, my drug dealer literally lives right down the street. I can, I can walk to the gas station and it's
that's pretty.
Exactly. That's
pretty rough.
When you know that's available, where you're at treatment.
And all you have to do is just tip the scale just a little bit, and you're back at it again.
A little bit, absolutely. So we have to encourage and help. They get to that point of, I don't want to live this life anymore. I don't want to do this. I don't want to keep going to court anymore.
I think that's the difference between Catholic Outreach and the Resource Center, is a lot of that, what you're just saying now. It's the day-to-day care that you provide that the Resource Center can't. It's kind of clinical more than what you guys offer.
Honestly, I don't know.
That's what I have heard. So, like I say, it's just hearsay, but it just feels to me like it's more clinical then you guys are more family.
Oh, I feel like we're family. I mean, and I feel like that. I mean, I care about these people dearly.
Oh, that's what
And
Beverly said. Same
they're
thing.
they are
And Mona.
And Mona,
yeah,
yes.
they are yeah, I can't fathom the battles that they're going through every day, every single day. Sleeping, it's not sleeping, but I mean, just being outside, it's freezing. And just to be, I do this little thing where I wear like either a light jacket or no jacket or whatever, just on my drive to work in the morning, just because it's like, well, I can do it for 10 minutes. They've done it all night long. And it just that mindset of, how your bones must ache just sitting on the sidewalk.
I can't even imagine.
Just trying to, or just when your feet get so cold that you're just, that's all you can think about is just when you can't feel your toe, and then just trying to, I don't know, all of that, just you get, it just, it's crushing. And so it's like, what little thing can you do to help make it a little better? Like a warm shower or clean clothes, or is it, they're so close to getting on Social Security, so how can we help them apply, or or whatever, or the doctor. I mean, if they're, they've come in with a cough, or we get burns and we get blisters, and there's so many acute things that they come in with, and please go and see, we have St. Mary's Family Practice, the residents, and they're so good. And then we have Meryl at Clinic is there, and then we have Ona and Melinda with Pathways, and then we have Dr. Dolan with Colorado Foot and Ankle Podiatry. He comes in once a month, and he's fantastic as well. And then we have a Grand Junction Psychiatry comes in, and they've been helping get some resources going in lifespan psychiatry, and then my favorite is I shouldn't say that, but Dr. Morgan, he's one of our volunteers. He does our front desk on Wednesday, and then he does soul care on Thursdays. So he just listens. And then he also does the shuttle sometimes too. So Dr. Morgan's just fantastic. So, but we are very blessed because we just have lots of resources that
have lots of volunteers. I know Bev said 600 volunteers.
Yeah, and I think you have gone into depth with that more than Bev could at that time. But I think people need to know exactly what is available already through Catholic Outreach.
Oh, so we have, and then sometimes it's just, I don't know, just like some weird connections sometimes, like, I don't know, just that, like travel, like, what was it? Right before Christmas, this kid needed to get home. And so we just did a little, hey, he needs $11 to get the bus pass. So we just kind of took a little pool and got him his $11 to get home for Christmas. And so then there's, when I was doing law work, criminal defense is still a passion of mine. And I have very dear friends that are still doing that work. And I would come home and I'd be working on, something very intense in a homicide case or something. And I would talk to the attorneys, and they're like, boy, you're very giddy today for some reason. I'd say, I see miracles every day. And I said, it's hard to explain. And they're like, you're just a volunteer. And I'd say, and then I would tell them a few things.
Just
because they were like, how are you doing that when you're supposed to be working on, whatever. And I'd say, it's soothing my soul to go and watch these people who have been sleeping in a dumpster, and then they're coming and they're helping young moms carry groceries to the car, or, they're helping, they gave someone else that didn't have a cigarette, or I got an extra pair of socks, you can have my socks, or just little tiny things, but then they are big things between each other.
Yes,
and
huge.
So now at the day center, it's I'm gonna cry, but it's so much bigger when you get to see someone who, it's beautiful. There are miracles every single day, whether it's I don't know, it's amazing. And when you see people actually just smiling, visiting, just talking, having, it's like this, just, it's peaceful. The mornings, just, they have their coffee and their, sometimes ramen noodle, or they bring their oatmeal in, and they're just, it's just,
it's community.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they are family. And then we're kind of an awkward haberdashery family, but I know they have my back. There have been a few times, and when I very first started working there, my husband was like, oh, okay, because he used to give water to the homeless when he worked at Pepsi. He always carried water, and he's like, there's some rough bunches, and I said, but you wait until now he volunteers there. So he's like, and the kids are like, and he goes, I love it. He goes, they're the coolest bunch of people. And then so my son was not convinced, and he came to bring me a tea one morning, and one of the ladies, he's like, Mom, is that one of your volunteers? And I said, no, babe, she lost her husband, and she became an alcoholic, and it hit him hard, and he goes, my goodness, he goes, that could be me, that could be one of my friends. And he goes, she's just a little grandma. And I said, I know, honey. I said, but these, so just like, it's, again, there's that perception of, what does homeless look like?
Right.
And then you come in and you see, a young woman who is beautiful and, has nice clothes, and then find out that, she was kicked out of her home. Or, or a young, a teenager, 18, but then there's, maybe they're gay or transgender, and that didn't fit in with, their religion, something like that, or, there's all kinds of things, and it just, there's not a face that fits homelessness. It kind of, and I was just talking to somebody else, and it's like, once upon a time, a lot of these people, had careers, or, were raising children, or just live in I hate the word normal, but live in a regular, stable life, and the rug got pulled out from under them, and, now here they are, and they just need a little help. And so that's what we do, is just, we help. And it could be, again, it could be something very small, like maybe just having a place to get your mail that's safe and secure, or it could be all of the above. So that's what we do.
Very good.
That is just brilliant. And I think if we were to sum up, what would you like people to know about the homeless and about helping? Because what I remember in sociology, it said way back, in like the 1800s, or you look at Andrea Mayberry, where somebody was an alcoholic and they were Otis, and they said, Otis has an alcohol problem, but that's not all of Otis. Otis is this person, and he has wonderful characteristics too. And, I think most of us don't, you don't interact with somebody that's homeless because you're maybe afraid.
I think afraid is the word.
Absolutely.
So what would you say that we should know about the homeless and how to help? Because they are a person, they are created by God, and they have just as much value as we do. But how do you tell them to relate or help or understand?
So I think just the easiest way is to volunteer is a good way to start. And everyone has a story, and it's just the easiest way. When I was very first started doing criminal defense work, same. Like, I couldn't imagine myself sitting in a jail cell with someone accused of killing their wife. And then you just kind of take down the wall, and then they're a person, and I'm not comparing that to someone who's homeless, but I've been afraid of some of the same people that I have helped day to day. I know their name, I know their kind of their background story, but out on the street, I wouldn't approach them. I mean, there's been a couple times that, when someone's drinking or in, clearly high, absolutely not. But in a safe environment, when there's an opportunity, and of course, like, we're always in pairs or have buddy systems or whatever, but if you had an opportunity where you could, I have a young man right now that he helps us with laundry, and he's like, I just love coming here. I've learned so much. These, just the stories are amazing.
Just volunteer.
So there's like safe places that you could have interactions that would maybe kind of take that stigma away. I would definitely not recommend, for me personally, I wouldn't recommend just walking up to someone outside that you don't know or don't, because one, you don't know if there's, traumatic brain injuries or, addictions or things like that. I wouldn't do that. I don't know. I mean, I assume everyone is homeless. That's a new thing. I mean, anyone with a backpack, that's just a thing. I don't know. And then I'm like, oh, what do they need? What can I do? I should have brought some socks with me. So then it's probably like, no, he's just going to school. Why do you do that? I don't know. I know. I get, my whole family teases me about that. I'm like, I'm sorry, but whatever. But I think it's just that, like, if that's something that you're really curious about, that we have opportunities. I know Mona does. I mean, there's lots of nonprofits that have different opportunities that that's just a way, and even a couple of hour commitment can change your perspective on a lot of things,
and maybe change somebody's life for the better.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Oh, absolutely. Because you can see that, because sometimes there are different connections that when we get a different volunteer, someone who maybe hasn't spoken or is just very reserved, all of a sudden it's like, where did that come from? But then you learn that maybe they were from the same area, or they grew, there's some connection, and it changes the connectivity. So it's very enlightening, and again, you get to watch miracles. So
right,
not being selfish, but it's kind of cool. So.
No. Well, you've been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we know them, the truth as we see it. You decide. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Jody.
No, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.